I don't regard myself as fundamentally a professional, anyway. I'm basically an adventurer. And those people who are serious and are professional, truly and deeply serious at the expense of every other value in life, are probably the people who make the biggest contribution to art. I certainly wouldn't like to be one of them.
The pledge, the turn, the prestige, the 3 stages of every magic trick. The pledge. The magician presents an ordinary object or situation. A rabbit, a woman, a deck of cards, a radio broadcast, a Shakespeare play, a movie about a man. The turn. The magician takes the ordinary object and performs something extraordinary. Makes the rabbit disappear, saws the woman in half, stages Macbeth with an all-black cast in the 1930s, presents the biography as a jigsaw puzzle, pieces scattered all out of order. The turn leaves the audience in a state of wonder and surprise. The turn alone entertains them. The turn alone would satisfy most of them. The point of magic is not just to surprise. The point of magic is to astound. The point of magic is to convert. And so, after leaving us off kilter, the magician reaches for the prestige. The vanished object returns, and it's up your ass. The all-black Macbeth in Harlem is actually good. The fictional Martian invasion has your neighbors in a bunker. The biographical mystery of the great American shatters everything you know about knowing people. The pledge, the turn, the prestige, the ordinary, the extraordinary, and the impossible. Real, the unreal, the miraculous. These are the 3 stages of magic. However, for some illusions, there can be a 4th stage, which comes into play when something goes wrong. When the dove out of the hat is dead. When the woman, sawed in half, is bleeding. When the card up your ass is not the king of hearts, but a joker. Or when the magician himself, grown weary of his ability to manipulate, loses faith in his own act, and sets out to fetishize chaos, sabotage himself. The 4th stage known as the failure. And it was the speciality of one of the most famous magicians who ever lived. A magician who produced the most spectacular play, most sensational radio show, and most important movie in American history.
All these reflections, I can see them, and I can feel them.
I am speaking of Orson Welles. A man who got bored of greatness before he could even achieve it. A man who became enormous as a way to disappear. A man who believed in magic, perhaps too much, and perhaps not enough. O is for Orson, a giant jigsaw figure in the landscape of filthy Armenian adventures. Why are on the air with a new guest, a man by the name of Darius. Pronounce your last name, Darius.
Cheeky. It's pretty.
It's cheeky.
Yeah, it's weirdly spelled. But...
Yeah, I had a literalistic idea in my head about it. Darius Csiky, and who is Csiky? He's a young Gen Z filmmaker and podcaster of the 8PL8s podcast, which I appeared on some months ago.
Yes.
Out in Canada, right?
Correct.
What part of Canada?
Montreal, Quebec. Beautiful,
Quebec.
sunny, snowy. Yeah.
Leonard Cohen land.
Yes. Actually, it's funny. I went to his apartment not long ago. It's right here.
It's a museum.
And I wish it was. No, there's people living in it, so it's really weird. I always take pictures of it. It's like a yearly thing I do, and there's often just someone living in there who's just really pissed at me. They don't like it.
Okay, they don't let just random visitors in to check out Leonard Cohen's.
I wish they would.
It would be the appropriate thing. If I lived there, I would be welcoming people all the time. I just have my doors unlocked and. Do they not know it's Leonard Cohen's apartment?
That's my question. That'd be so funny if it's just some rich goober who's like, yeah, this tiny little house is $10 million. Let me just get it because why not? Yeah, it's interesting.
Because it's $10 million, but it's so tiny that I won't ever get bothered. So I'm going to pay the premium.
Yeah, he wants to lay low. That's awesome.
I want to lay low right here at the Casa de Cohen. Mm-hmm. Well, you reached out to me with a desire to record about Orson Welles. And of course, Orson Welles is a towering figure of cinema history that is no less towering to me personally. Mm-hmm. I remember when you reached out, I had just did an episode with Yirk on his show, Bistro California, about one of Orson Welles' most famous movies. And so I thought, this is a good time to kind of rewatch or watch all of his movies, read the biography by David Thomson called Rosebud, the story of Orson Welles, and really start thinking about this giant figure who is also something of a giant enigma. And we shall attempt our best to pluck the petals of that enigma and see if there's anything within. Darius, what is your relationship? First of all, tell the people about yourself a little bit and how you came to know my show, and then tell us your relationship to the Big O.
Oh yeah, it's my pleasure. It's there's really not much to me. I'm a very, very shallow person. You said it in 2 lines. I make movies and I have a show. The reason why I know of you, of course, like we have the great mastermind, Jack Mason, the perfume nationalist. It seems like a lot of this web, circles around him, and that's how I found your show. And I heard you, and I'm like, that guy's cool. You sound like Maddox. Do you know Maddox?
Maddox?
Yes.
No. Who's Maddox? Not Mannix.
No, Maddox. It's a huge downfall guy, and I really don't want to compare you to because you're an upstanding gentleman. That guy is a mess, but he's a famous early 2000s internet. One of the first guys to have a blog that was quite famous, popular. He would do these things where like children's artwork sucks, et cetera, et cetera. It's just weird. But he's also like an LA Armenian guy. Maybe it's racist of me, but to me immediately something clicked, and I'm like, I have to talk to this man. After the initial sort of racist attraction, I went in, I heard your show, and I was blown away by all the yada yada yada. I'm not going to compliment you too hard, but the whole universe, it's very, very charming. I like your taste. I like your taste in music and film, et cetera, et cetera. Not books because I can't read. I'm trying to, but it's not something.
Well, you're of an age that just isn't capable of reading. I think that's the problem, right?
Yeah, you also have a lot of theories, the goofy theories about Zubers, which I always love to disagree with. But
do you disagree with them, or are you just offended at how true they are?
Of course, like every disagreement, it comes out of personal pride. Yes, of course,
right,
I mean, you're right, and I'm just pissed off by it. No, but anyways, this is all the how I came in contact, I guess, but. Really, Orson Welles, I think, is someone you need to appreciate further or like more deeply than the image that he has, right? Because it's easy to say that, I like cinema, therefore I like Orson Welles. He's influential, blah, but I don't give a shit about that, So many people, Sergei Eisenstein, extremely influential, probably one of the most influential people who ever held a camera. And his movies are dog shit communist propaganda, you know? And so it's like, it's not, to be an important figure is not enough for me. But Orson Welles is, I don't know, he's taste manifest. He's a whirlwind, you know, he's a strong presence. He's got a great voice. He used to be attractive, then he got really fat. He makes fantastic movies, and he always touches on something so new and creative in each one of his works that it's just, you know, it's always a pleasure. Also, just to add to all this, he turned out to be such a loser in the end, you know, and I love him to death. I don't mean that in a negative way, but compared to the great American filmmaker image that he built for himself with his first picture, which we're not going to mention. Sorry, fuck, I forgot about that.
Well, no, we'll get to it at the end. I just want to,
Yeah.
you know, my plan was just to get to the first picture at
Yes.
the end. And,
But-
and
excuse me, I'm
discuss
monologuing,
everything but the
okay?
first picture until the end. Okay, so if
I'm
you're waiting for us
monologuing,
to talk about we're going to talk about it,
Yeah.
but we're saving it for the end because it is the key to all mythologies. So
Exactly.
it's better to get to it at the end than to start with it, in my opinion.
But anyways, to close off real quick on this Orson Welles, like I wish it was. I really can't belt out those monologues that way. But anyways, he's someone who touches me with his dedication to the art and the fact that at the end he was a loser. And again, not in a negative sense, but really he did not live up to the hype that people had about his films at the start. Because every single time he tried to make something, he would say outside figures ruined it. I think he himself ruined all of his other movies to some extent, whether it's in the publicity, whether it's in the bridges he burned. You know, I'm not saying that he didn't make great pictures. I think some of his greatest came after the one that shall not be named for now. But in the end, he wasn't this. He didn't go out, you know, like a you know, rising star, like this massive image, this monolith of cinema. No, he sort of died in obscurity, relatively, and then one was found again with all the Criterion and you know, re-releases VHSs of his movies. So I think for all those reasons, it's just a fascinating figure.
Well, and first of all, you know, when we get to the one that shall be named, that is the main reason why everyone knows the name Orson Welles. But it was not the reason why everyone knew the name Orson Welles before he made that movie.
Correct.
Orson Welles had one of the all-time precocious careers of anyone in the world, actually, not just in America. He basically started. He was a wunderkind. He was completely worshipped by his parents. He was the Mr. Talent. You know, he was like Mr. Gonna Succeed, Mr. Talented of all time as a kid in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and a familiar place, by the way, if you've been following the news the last 5 years, especially in 2020. He's from Kenosha, Wisconsin. He was already taking the theater world by storm by the age of 10. He was seducing gay theater people by the age of 10 years old. and you know, playing characters that he was big for his age, and he was very developed, which is one of the reasons he was so seductive. He was playing characters decades older than him. He was portraying on stage. I have the list somewhere, but like he would be cast in a famous play and play the 40-year-old as a mid-teen. Yeah. While the much older, much more experienced star would be playing a younger character. He traveled all over the place, and he squeezed a lot of mileage out of those travels. As a kid, I mean, his parents took him to Shanghai once, and oh boy, did he get a lot of mileage out of that trip, or at least, you know, all the stories he would tell about it that were certainly most likely invented. He completely, you may have heard, you know, nobody knows anything anymore, but let me ask you, are you aware of his staging of an all-black Macbeth in Harlem in I think it was 1937?
That's exactly what I know about it. Nothing more deep or anything. I just know that he did it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's nothing more to say except that it was an all-black Macbeth in Harlem that took the city by storm, and it was it was one of these things where when you read about it, you know, a lot of these stunt type of theatrical events are hard to put yourself in the room for. here out here in the future. But when you read about that one, and you understand, you just start to picture it, and you first of all see that it could have been really good. Like you could just imagine the excitement. It was an absolute sensation. It was one of the all-time theatrical sensations, probably in the history of the United States and maybe even the world. When you consider like what a single few month long run or whatever it was what it can kind of excite and rouse among the scene. That was right up there with the very best. So one of the reasons why he had the opportunity to make the almost unprecedented opportunity to make his first movie, which we shall not name for a while, was because of the way in which he simply absolutely took the world by storm in the theater, and then, most importantly, even more importantly than the theater, the radio.
Yeah.
How much do you know, Darius Csiky, about Orson Welles on the radio?
Damn, that's so aggressive. I don't know, man. I actually have listened to a lot of his recordings from the I forget what the name of it is, but the Harry Lime shows. The character he ended up playing in
the Adventures of Harry Lime.
Yeah, then the Third Man.
Harry Lime was his character in The Third Man, which is one of his triumphs as an actor, one of his few triumphs as an actor, actually, after the initial movie.
Okay, sorry.
Very few triumphs.
Do you mean that in your view, as in the quality of the acting, or as in like success in the biz?
Both.
Okay.
I think that his quality as an actor, he became his go-to mode after the first couple of movies was very much mailed in, over the top, hammy, playing a big fat Mr. Orson Welles, like really cranking it up. This, however, is an unforgettable spot. Like, this one is one of those performances that just cuts right through the movie. It makes you forget he didn't even make the movie himself. It wasn't his movie. Although he did add some of his own dialogue, including that very crucial speech about the cuckoo clock. That was his own contribution.
Oh, nice.
He doesn't come in, of course, famously in The Third Man. He doesn't come in until an iconic moment and shot late into the movie. For the first time. And I don't remember now whose decision that was. It may have been his. I mean, it may have been his. Somewhere along the line, he was supposed to be in the movie from the beginning, and the decision was made to delay his introduction until, the third act, I think it was. And so after the success of that movie, he returned to his favorite place, the radio, with a contract for The Adventures of Harry Lime, based on that character, but as a much, a melodramatic, turned into a melodramatic Robin Hood type character in the actual movie. Harry Lime is the definition of evil. He's diluting penicillin for the black market to make money during the war. He's literally causing people to die so that he can make money. Yeah, he's a troll. He's the ultimate troll. He's the ultimate cantbot. And
Sorry, not to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, which is something you see in Orson Welles himself. The Harlem thing, I'm sure artistically was very fulfilling, but there is a sense of, oh boy, the people are going to hate this one, and that's what makes it exciting. Same thing with, again, I'm sure you're going to mention it because you mentioned the radio, but the whole UFO scare that he staged. Like, there is a mischievous sort of genuinely evil tormentor in that man, Well,
and that comes from the fact that he is at his core, his actual identity is he is a magician. Hey, this is your host, Alec Mohibian, with a quick message before we continue. Based in that great but very troubled place, Hollywood, California, Filthy Armenian Adventures is an interdimensional travel program that takes you deep into the cultural mysteries of our time. In search of truth, in search of gold, in search of lost friends and unsung heroes, in search of John Galt's motor. This show is your antidote to the black pill. This is your guide to the places, the personalities, the ideas and creations the enemies of man don't want you to know. This is your techno-noir investigation into the good, the evil, and the God hiding under our noise. This is where you get the news before it breaks, before it blows, before it burns. The show is supported entirely by patrons at patreon.com/filthyarmenian. As a patron, you get access to twice as many adventures, including the most important ones, the ones with the real facts. Plus, regular brief smoke break spiritual reports on topics of the day. As a patron, you also get exclusive access to our Smash live events. Ask anyone who's attended one, and they will tell you it's an experience you'll never forget. It's very easy to keep Filthy Armenian Adventures alive. You can still listen to the show on your favorite app like Spotify or Apple, and you can do so with the pride that you're putting a little bit of money where your soul is. More patrons means more fuel, more topics, more investigations, more miracles, more secret locations, and forbidden territories around the world, and the world that is Los Angeles, our post-apocalyptic headquarters. It means we'll be able to track down more enchanting figures in the landscape, dare them to abandon their masks, and join our quest out of the darkness and into a golden age. Patreon.com/filthyarmenian. Thank you for being one of the good ones, and enjoy the show. He had a show that is one of the most remarkable magic shows of all time, and it was the Mercury, I think it was called the Mercury Wonder Theater or something. He did a tent show on Cahuenga, right just a stone's throw from where I sit right now. I can just imagine where it was. It was probably right after the Cahuenga Pass, like around where Universal Studio is. He had set up a tent, and it was like this big-time Hollywood magic show that he did that all the stars would come to, and also regular people. And the stars had to pay, the regular people didn't have to pay. There were all kinds of things like that. Went on for months. All the stars took part. He sawed Marlene Dietrich in half. He did things with everybody. It was like a big old carnival extravaganza that he held, which when you read about it and you think about it, and this was right after Magnificent Ambersons, I believe. So this is the early 40s. You could see how this must have been quite a spectacle. So he is one of the, as a magician, one of the greatest magicians, but he's also a magician who conquered all these other, who worked through these other media, and therefore became,
is what you mean. Sorry.
But his identity. The important thing to keep in mind as we attempt to unravel this man is that he's a magician. He did magic from a very early age. Mm-hmm. His relationship to reality was that of a magician, and his relationship to himself was that of a magician, and his relationship, his struggle with believing in anything was that of a magician. I would describe him as the man who believed in magic, but not quite enough. And so it's important to keep in mind that he's a magician. And radio, being a magician, radio was his element. He loved the hypnotic power and the intimacy that he could achieve with radio without you seeing what's going on behind the curtain. No evidence of he didn't want any audience. It was at the time very customary for popular radio programs to have a live audience. He did not want that at all. His Mercury Theater on the radio, various versions of it, which was like, every week, bang, 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 they would have these 1-hour radio dramas, usually an adaptation of a classic or something, like Christmas Carol or
Heart of Darkness.
Heart of Darkness, which he wanted to be his first movie, as I'm sure you know. He wanted his first movie, which actually sounds quite interesting, and he shot a lot of footage for, was going to be a Heart of Darkness where you're the POV of Marlowe and you're hearing his voice, but you never see him. So it would have been a very literary adaptation and very radio. And his first movie was actually very much a radio picture. It was you can watch it with your eyes closed, and you can see what I mean.
By first movie you mean first feature film?
I mean the first feature film that we're not going to mention until later. Yeah.
Aha, because there's a short that he made that's silent that has blackface in it. I thought you might love that one.
Oh, interesting. What is it called? That's right up my alley. That's what my first movie was. I was a short that did blackface in. So
yeah. Well, that's much funnier in this day and age. I think back in the day it was more Charlie Chaplin did the same thing. Like it's just I think it was more of a resources thing than like a really cutting edge political take. Anyways, I forget what it's called, but it really is more like a pastiche of shots here and there, and just it's his film school, so to speak. You know, it's just like he's learning how to pick up a camera and how to do these.
Why did he make it? What was his? What was the? What was the purpose?
Zero context. I just know it was before the movie, and it's a very good thing that he never picked up a camera again. I don't mean that in the figurative way. I mean literally, he didn't. He trusted that part to more talented people, and he was a pure director, if you know what I mean. Like he was writing too and acting, et cetera, but he wasn't a technical expert. He was the taste expert. So he sees something, he knows what he wants, and he gets the best people to execute that vision, which is really it's a huge strength.
Well, he managed to be teamed up with probably the greatest cameraman of all time, Greg Toland. Yeah. So this is another opportunity in examining the life of the career of Orson Welles, especially in the cinema. Mm-hmm. To appreciate just what a collaborative medium that was. There's a lot of bullshit about trying to deprive the auteurs credit and also trying to give them too much credit all throughout. You know what I mean?
I really want to hear this because I
it's
hate
a pendulum
that so much. But please go ahead.
Yeah, well, because this especially exploded in the controversy of Pauline Kael's article about the movie that shall not be named, in the late 60s and the early 70s. She wrote this huge article which attempted to give all the credit for the screenplay to Herman Mankiewicz and to really diminish Orson's role. And it was a very stupid. In many ways, it's a very stupid article. Many of you maybe you've read it. Have you read her?
I've read it. I hate Pauline Kael. Can we say this? I'm sorry, you might love her, but
no. I don't love her at all. But it's perfectly valid to hate her. I don't hate her, but I don't trust her. I just don't think that I think she often spouted nonsense and she overwrote and she underthought. But nevertheless, she has a lot of interesting things to say about a lot of interesting movies. So.
You know what? Just about this, I really think that she is what people who hate Armand White think Armand White is. Like, what people say,
black man?
I don't know if that's what he's known as, but yeah, Armand White. I think he's like people just think that he just takes the famous movies and is like, it's anti-Trump, so I hate it. That's not what he does at all. Armand White has such a beautiful eye for, and again, if you hate him, that's completely fine. Like I don't have any personal attachment to anybody here, but
no, I don't hate him at all. He's cute and charming. I do think his problem is he does suffer from a bit of the contrarian bug when
But the way he describes his contrarian, like the take itself, sure, take it out of the whole article, and he's just hating the popular movies, but when you read them, if you have 2-3 brain cells, you can't disagree because it's such good points. For me, Pauline Kael, of course, I'm not going to pretend like she's not a very important figure in art and especially cinema criticism. But at the same time, it seems to me that she wants to dislike a picture when she does and love another. And the justification that I'm reading, although it's very well written, is not convincing at all. Like I don't know. I just don't feel that justification in her writing. I don't know if you.
Well, she only watched movies once, and it was when she saw them in the theater, and then she'd write a 10,000-word piece about them. Yeah. Now, part of that is incredible because I'm like, how do you remember any of that shit? I mean, she would take notes, but how would you remember the amount of detail that she would be able to summon in her pieces? In a way, it's kind of breathtaking that she was able to do that, but it's important that she was...
Actually, no, I disagree. That's bullshit, man. Look. You're telling me that it never happened that a projectionist goofed up on the switching of the roles and then it skipped a bit, or there's some problem with the sound, etc., or there's a power outage. So she doesn't go back and watch the movie she missed 5 minutes of. What does her opinion matter to me?
Well, her opinion is that she lost it at the movies, Darius. So you have to trust the resounding clamor of her orgasmic response. And that's basically what it is. And if you don't trust that, no, she's out to lunch on most of these movies, But once in a while, the girl shivers toward the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the Kale defender at all. I'm just I try to take an old man like a level of kind of like approach to even people I don't like who were nevertheless serious in their output. So she actually gave a shit about the movies. She was easily manipulated by people like Robert Altman, sure, but she did take things seriously, and she was also just way too involved. I mean, she was way too compromised. She was way too. She had too much of a kind of cult following. She had too much power that was accorded her by her post at the New Yorker. She was trying, she was ultimately her efforts to steer the cinematic culture of her time. I don't think they worked. I mean, they kind of led to going off of a cliff. So she didn't create her leadership, her use of power. I don't think it worked. I don't think it ultimately led to the big giant crash of auteur cinema, did it not? I mean, just looking at it I'm not blaming that on her, but just looking at the historical timeline, she had a lot to do with movies becoming a much more intellectual talking point in the 70s, but she ultimately hung herself by her own rope, I think, as a critic, if we're being totally honest. But she's not the problem, okay? She's not the problem. She did nevertheless. Well, actually, it wasn't as bad as it seemed. It seemed like her big giant piece called Raising Cain. It seemed like that was a major nuclear bomb for Orson Welles, but it turned out that it kind of wasn't. It turned out that it kind of rallied a lot of people to his side. It kind of further cemented Citizen Kane, that we're now naming for the first time, and we'll talk about later. But it did further cement it as this like holy grail of movies for all serious people, even if it was very unfair to Orson's actual involvement in the screenplay. And so, she had this, like, how do we get on Pauline Kael? What happened here?
You're going to hate me, bro. We're going to bring up Roger Ebert right now, because that's another Citizen Kane link, because Roger Ebert made a film called Citizen Yuppie, in which he does a parody of Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. What do you think of that?
He made a film called what?
Citizen Yuppie.
Citizen Yuppie as a parallel to Citizen Kane?
Yes, we can watch it. It's like 1 minute long. It was the special episode, Siskel and Ebert. Ebert and Siskel said, hey, you guys hate us because we're critics and we're not filmmakers. Well, here you go. We made a movie each. So each of them shot a short film, and Roger Ebert's humble contribution to that show is Citizen Yuppie. And it's him getting a new car.
Oh, okay. And is that...
Yes.
Is it just a joke? Is it just a light joke?
I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I'm telling you, all these critics are obsessed. Don't trust a critic who says that I don't like it. They love it. They wouldn't be critics because.
Did he not love it? Did Roger Ebert not?
Of course he loved it. But what I mean is, this movie lives rent free in the critics' heads. So as you said,
okay, but this is the movie that invented the movies as a like academic subject matter.
Interesting. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the movie that did that. So. That's like without dispute. So when people call it the greatest movie of all time, that's what that means. That doesn't mean, it's your favorite movie of all time or my favorite movie of all time. Although I can't name one that I would necessarily put ahead of it. I mean, it's right up there for me.
Stay tuned, everybody. I have a film coming out.
Stay tuned.
Very soon.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. We'll see. We'll see how. Stay tuned. But look, the point is that it did.
Yeah, I gotta unleash myself. I can't do calm. I'm a very energetic guy. Look, D.W. Griffith is the first actual filmmaker, I would say. I understand what you're saying. I'm not,
No, he
disproving
absolutely
anything.
is, and he's the one who invented the medium. But I'm talking about as a he the
Academic art form. Yeah.
I'm talking about the inventing the idea of taking movies seriously. I'm not talking about the medium. The medium was invented
Right.
by D.W. Griffith. The language was invented by D.W. Griffith. The ability to tell a grand narrative through moving picture was invented by D.W. Griffith. But the first movie that got people to take movies seriously as an art form was the one that shall not be named. That's
Well, we just
a
named it
matter of
17. I'm so
historical record.
sorry. This is my fault. We start at the beginning. Can we move before that? We're doing this non-linear thing. I don't want to cut you off in any way, but what happened to his childhood tale of taking over the Irish theater at 15? I want to talk about that because that's such a lie. I can't take it anymore. I've heard it so many times.
You know what?
if you-
Call him out. Just fucking, read him to filth right now.
I keep bringing this up, and I'm so sorry. Look, I'm not a fact checker, but his story is his dad was this weirdo inventor, okay, that apparently made the fold-up kits that people in the army, the whole U.S. Army, every single soldier used Orson Welles' dad's invention of the foldable, knife and spoon and drink holder kit. Basically those trays that you can press into a tray and then expand into a full set of cutlery. So he invented that. So he had a bunch of money, but at 15 years old, alcoholic father, croaks, passes away. Citizen Kane himself takes a bunch of money, goes to Ireland, takes over the theater by lying in his own story, by lying to everybody about who he is. Then he's a powerhouse, comes back to America, and that's where the whole legend is born, right? That is, I can't believe it. I don't have any facts to disprove it whatsoever. It doesn't sound right. It sounds like a whole lie, which is the start of a beautiful magician's trick that he's been doing for his entire life and continues to this day. That it's the myth is never born without contribution from the mythy. You know what I'm saying? Like without him always hyping himself up as this great legend, we wouldn't be talking about him as we do today. I don't care how great his movies are. He was his own best hype man, I'd say.
Well, he was a hype man, and he understood the importance of hype. And he pretty much seemed to do nothing more than have grand lunches and grand hotels where he would hold court and tell a bunch of stories that were probably in large part inventions, which is fine. That's how he spent most of his life. That's how he spent, especially after after the failure of the Magnificent Ambersons, which. We can start with on that one since that's his second movie. But before we get there, the Irish theater stories taking over the Irish theater. He met these two gay playwrights who really took a liking to him in Ireland. He spent like a summer or whatever it was in Ireland.
Yeah.
He didn't take over the fucking theater, but he was a sensation in Ireland.
Yeah.
He was an absolute at the age of 15 or 16.
Hey, trust me, bro. When I went abroad in Europe, all the girls wanted me, bro. Trust me. Right now, I'm an incel loser, but back then, that's what it sounds like to me. And I know he's a huge success, but you know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, it was. I'm sure that his. I'm sure that what's their names? The guys in Ireland that took a liking to him, the two of them.
I forget. But they appear in the F is for fake. And they also they're like, no, we didn't believe that he was this legend whatsoever. We just liked him and gave him a chance.
Yeah, I mean, he had this like extremely palpable force, which you can see from his very first performances, and you can hear on the radio in the radio performances. The Mercury Theater, the War of the Worlds broadcast that famously got a bunch of people to panic and to freak out and to think that the world was actually being invaded by Martians. And I'm sure the extent of that was a bit exaggerated, but there were people who took it very seriously and got all riled up, even though there was a disclaimer in the beginning that it was fiction, and at the end, and it was
but
there was
that's not in the story. That's not in the story. The story.
That's
is
not
just
in
like
the story, but. There are also excuses for why they might have not been listening to like it was like
of course,
there was a thing there was a popular show or something that ended like a minute into his broadcast. So a lot of people came in after the disclaimer and started. I mean, it's perfectly believable that it would have freaked a lot of people out. I mean, you can judge for yourself.
Radio is like Pauline Kael watching movies. You can only have it once, right? So if heroin Kael here is nodded off and then she gets into it 5 minutes late, it's completely understandable that she thinks it's real. It's also just such a thing it's just so, the thing about radio, which distinguishes it from the podcast form. It's the podcast rebirth of that form is that it's one and out. You listen to it once and it's gone forever. There were no reruns on the radio ever. There really weren't. It wasn't even like later on radio NPR. Like Garrison Home Keeler shit where they would rerun it on a Tuesday, not just they would have like one rerun of the later in the week. No. As far as I'm aware, there were never any reruns in the radio at all of these dramas. So you listen to them once and it's gone forever until somebody creates YouTube and people put it on YouTube. Which thank God for that, because we do get a lot of these Mercury recordings have been salvaged. A lot of them are in very poor shape, but they have been salvaged, and you can listen to many of them. And I just posted one to my Patreon during Christmas, the Murder of Roger Ackroyd, the Agatha Christie story, which he adapted and played Poirot and also the killer in the performance of. So radio was really his place to shine. He liked to talk. He liked the sound of his own voice. He liked manipulating people with his voice. He enjoyed it. He enjoyed not having to worry about anything else and being seen and being people knowing what's going on. He was a master of the radio. And by the way, did you know that he is also the voice of the Shadow? The Shadow? I don't know what.
Who knows? The Shadow knows. The famous radio drama of all time, The Shadow. That was Orson Welles.
Nice.
He played the character of the Shadow. Yeah, who had another name has an alternate name.
Didn't he? Sorry, he also. This is the meme, the thing that people have to repeat. That he also did a lot of these ads, but I'm pretty sure he had smaller roles in other movies. That maybe. Am I mistaken? Do I misremember? Because I know he used to play a lot of smaller roles in his own films. Like, the guy who dies at the start of both of our favorites, Mr. Arkadin. He also plays
Mr. Arkadin. Yeah,
but you know what I'm saying? Like, he plays that guy dying as well. So he loved to do not fully, but like VO work for his own character. So is it true that he also did smaller roles in goofier movies later on? I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, he did all kinds of roles to make money. He did the shittiest roles you can imagine to make money in the decades following.
Yeah. So I remember. Yeah, exactly.
No, yeah, he's got a ton of role. I mean, he's got there's a ton of movies he appeared in one form or another. For as little as a one-day shoot. He did that very often. There are lots of stories as you go through his biography of him playing multiple roles in in various plays and productions. Things like that. He did that narrating, but then being the main character, doing all these things and then letting the audience in on it. When there was one time that he was, I think, doing he was staging a Salome production, and the main character broke his leg or got sick or something, couldn't do something. And so basically Orson Welles, as Orson Welles, was like helping him through the part for a performance while all the audience could see, and they were all delighted at him letting him on the trick. Right. Everything Orson Welles did was a fascination with the trickery and the trickery of performance and of magic. He was nothing moved him more than some kind of experimentation with that machinery of how to deceive people. And like every magician I have ever known of or heard, he had absolutely no great regard for telling the truth. It just wasn't something that mattered very much to him. He was totally fine lying for the sake of a better story. And I do think that is something, as we go through his career, that really quite ends up derailing him. But it's just worth noting the importance of radio. to him as not only to the rise of his stardom, his meteoric rise as a very young man, but who got that contract at the age of 22 in Hollywood to make a movie and have final cut of it in any movie he wanted, and and have final cut. And it's he's not the only person who got final cut. But there had been people before him, of course, including Chaplin, including Preston Sturges, I think, who had full writer director final cut. But for someone who was 22 and had never made a movie before, never cut his chops, never what do you call it? Cut his whatever it is. Cut his teeth, anyway. Cut his fingers, cut his dick. Sure. What is it? What is that expression?
Gone trans for cinema. Yeah.
Gone trans. Yeah. And whoever transed for cinema before that, it was quite impressive. I don't think the others ever got that. Everyone else had to cut their calves or whatever the expression is.
It seems like someone extremely the most talented person in the world getting hit by lightning. It's a bunch of coincidences that happened at the right time, and he stepped up and made the best of it. It's just what you love to see.
Yeah, and so did his collaborators on that movie. They all made the best of it, and they all kind of found it was a lightning strike for many of them, not just him. They found the perfect story and the perfect kind of figure through which to awaken their drunken kind of sleepy souls. And in his case, he found the perfect subject matter, which would end up being the subject matter that he would basically pursue for the rest of his life. And which is why, it's worth coming to this at the very end, because I think he nailed it. He was a prophet of his own doom. He was a prophet of his own character. He was a prophet of his own tragedy, and it's all there in that first movie. What do you like before we get to that first movie, which is what it's all about? But tell me what the next thing is that you like about Orson Welles. Now, right after that first movie, he was contracted he made a movie called Magnificent Ambersons, which he and many others had long claimed that would have been his best movie had it not been chopped to pieces by the studio, while Orson Welles, in what would become a pattern, was MIA, off in Brazil, making his this long political documentary that never got finished called "It's All True," and fucking the jungle Brazilians left and right, and doing Carnival, and just being out to lunch, and then complaining that the studio destroyed his movie. This became a massive pattern with this guy, and he was led there by these attention-thirsty libtard tendencies. As he himself admitted, he was a basic progressive, but he pretended to be a radical when necessary in order to get along, and when he felt like there was something to be gained by it. And he took on all these. He toured with FDR. Toured with FDR, and FDR said, we are the two best told him we are the two best actors in America. And this is on the record. This isn't just a private remark. FDR called himself and Orson the two best actors in America. Orson Welles very much saw himself having a potential future as president, much like a certain character in one of his early movies, which never came to fruition, but he definitely smelled it and felt it. And if there was an opportunity, I'm sure he would have taken it. So he goes on all these tangents, and he loses his second movie. Yeah.
So just to answer your question, I think The Magnificent Ambersons is a magnificent picture. I love that movie to death. I, again, have a hard time, like the cheated spouse, what I'm saying? I have a hard time believing this big liar. I'm sure the studio did have, they basically cut out the whole final act, to chopped it to pieces. But at the same time, the film is so good that I doubt that it, I don't know. All these things are completely unfounded. I have no reason to believe this, but I don't think that this was a massacred masterpiece. I think it's a very, very excellent film, and it would have been slightly better maybe without interference. But we don't know this, and Orson Welles fucked this one up for sure. In that sense.
Well, what we have now is an 80-minute version of what would have been twice as long, according to him. Yeah. We don't. I mean, it's not the version that. I mean, you can see some beautiful touches in it, there, as with all of his movies.
Yeah. I love it. I'll be honest. I love the current cut. I don't care that it's clearly truncated. I love it.
Well, I'll tell you this: it is other than there's only one other movie, two really, in his entire. Well, if not counting F is for Fake, his last movie, which is one of his best, but that's just sort of was its own genre, so it doesn't really count necessarily. But among his fictional movies, it's really one of only two where you could tell that his heart was in it. Yeah. And somewhere, of course, the heart got trampled on. This is a story basically about the decline of a great American family and the Midwest, in a sense, where they're from and the place that they're from. So it's this kind of the tragedy of this aristocratic family's decline as times change. And it has Joseph Cotton in it as Agnes Moorehead, I think, again. It's a kind of a wide sort of drama with about a whole family. You could tell his heart was in it, and in the future movies that begin very soon begin to come out, it never has that same sort of belief in its own story that you can still see in the cut that we have of Magnificent Amberson. So there I agree with you.
Yeah. But even the small touches, though, I'll say, like, I understand that you have to look at the film as the final piece here, like a one complete cohesive work of art, whatever. But, the way that it starts, just the very simple thing of like him again with his voice being like, I forget what the line is, but something along the lines of, this picture presents people dressed and acting in ways which may seem ridiculous today, but maybe will look as ridiculous to people 60 years or 100 years from now. Like that sort of timelessness, I love. That's something that's very hard to do, and people try so hard. I'm sure you've seen this. People try so hard to be above and make something that goes beyond what the traditional film is, to be a groundbreaking character. But this is purely effortlessly almost that, like it doesn't feel like an old movie. It doesn't feel like a movie that was made for a specific purpose. It doesn't feel like it's really like hitting you in the face with a certain message. It's just great. It's aesthetic purity, and I love it.
It does have a purity to it. Absolutely. That's kind of what I mean. Like, it has a purity that I don't think I basically don't think he ever achieves again, except in the trial. The trial has a certain purity to it that I think is what makes the trial one of his standout movies in the post CK phase, which is the rest of his life. Which is, it's just crazy because you read about his life until the age of 24, and it's like this endless epic. It's this odyssey. It's just, there's so many, you can fixate on just every few months is a massive thing. It's a massive story. Yeah. And then the last 50 years of his life is basically this breeze of meals and degradation and conversations and bloat. And it's like you can just breathe, and it's just such a weird thing that he lived. And I'm concerned with what was missing from this man that kind of all left us disappointed, leaves everyone disappointed at the end of the day.
Which makes it fascinating, though. It's okay. Yeah,
no, it is what makes it fascinating. And it's also what makes it's also just entirely consistent with his one great film. And I do think it was one great film. I like some of the other movies that we're going to talk about, but I don't think any of them are great. Now, feel free
wait a second. Don't you dare say that about The Stranger in 1946. I love that movie to death.
It's not a great movie, though.
It's not a great movie. Okay, wait. Let's screw.
I enjoy it
and whatever.
I enjoy
let's
it.
Talk about that right now.
Like
Edward
The
G.
Stranger.
Robinson in a career best performance. I know you'll say Double Indemnity or whatever, or The Whole Town's Talking, but that's not the case. This is him at his most subtle best. He's not hamming it up. He's not going crazy. He breaks his pipe in the first scene, and wow,
I like it. I like the movie. I always have. I have it on DVD from the early days. Yeah. I like it. It's a nice little cat and mouse game.
Yes.
So here's a story. To describe the story to the people, you have to be pitching your movies in elevator pitches soon. So,
brother, I'm so bad at this. Yeah, basically, The Stranger is one of the main masterminds behind the Holocaust has escaped, and to America. And this, by the way, was shot right after the Second World War. So it's not like a current day film about these events now is extremely derivative because there's millions that, millions of filmmakers try to make this exact story. But that was one of the first pictures. They used real footage from the camps and everything. It's so amazing. But anyways, him, Mr. Orson Welles takes up a false identity in the U.S. and marries a powerful congressman's daughter. And, to blend in, basically, to go like a sort of what people think Hitler did in Argentina. Is that real?
Argentina? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know what the country's called. Anyways, but basically, yes, he escapes. And Edward G. Robinson is one of those ruthless sort of, he calls himself a detective, but more like an assassin, a hired gun by the Allied forces to make sure that all these people who committed these atrocities perish. And it's, as you said, it's a cat and mouse game, but it's not a criminal and policeman cat and mouse game. It's more of a everybody is a corporate entity in this film. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but everybody's part of such a bigger thing. Like no one is working for themselves. It's always like the ideas and the way that the whole story unfolds. You never feel like someone is in the complete right. There is a almost unhealthy, disgusting obsession from everybody here. Both Orson Welles, who tries to make the Fourth Reich come to life, and Edward G. Robinson, who really will torment every innocent person until that one guilty man is dead. It's beautiful. It's a
great performance by Edward G. Robinson, of course, who's pretty much great in everything. Mm-hmm. The concept is a can't lose cat and mouse between a detective and a secret Nazi. So Edward C. Robinson arrives in this small New England town, tries to figure out who is the Nazi here, like if there is one, and immediately there's a clue that this person is actually that there would be somewhat here. Yeah. He tries to decode who it is.
Is that how you saw it though? So I don't want to cut you up, but like for me, I understand what you're saying. What you're saying is true, but this is not the typical cop. He's not just snooping around and trying to find the killer. No, this guy is obsessed. He won't sleep. He won't live. He won't even have a human conversation without the motive of getting this, bastard and killing him.
Well, that's his job. I mean, you're trying to find a Nazi. You're a war criminal. You're not gonna, I don't find it. Yeah. I don't find his obsession to be a topic unto itself, like you do. I guess maybe that's one of the reasons that I don't. Yeah. I mean, I just took it for granted that he's very good in that clever role. I like a lot of the small town touches. I like the diner clerk, the diner operator is my favorite.
Please,
the way he's constantly saying 75 cents, the way he's trying to engage everyone in a checkers game, and then the way he's clicking constantly, cha-chinging that cash register. I liked that. I liked him a lot. I liked him when I first watched the movie. I thought it was that's radio again. That's like having that. It's almost like a sound thing, like having him as part of the music of the movie. That character's voice.
Yeah. I thought of you though when I watched this movie, because this is the current day service. I know you feel strongly about this. The serve yourself. I'm going to play checkers and you serve your own coffee.
Yeah. He's a Zoomer. He's a Zoomer at the counter. He's like, serve yourself and get your own coffee. I felt that. I was very outraged.
Yeah.
Sorry, 75 cents.
I love it. It's 25 cents, by the way. Biden inflation didn't hit yet.
That's right. 25 cents. That'll be 25 cents. Yeah, if you lose the checkers game with him, it's 25 cents. I enjoy The Stranger. I really do enjoy The Stranger. But you have to ask yourself why, I think, why isn't this a better movie? There's something that doesn't, I don't know, maybe it's, I think, he's not as good as the Nazi here, and you can see this is like Orson Welles being a very portentous, he's trying to make this like he's doing basically what was true of communists in that time. Mm-hmm. This idea that there was Nazi sleeper cells that we would have to forever be on the watch for after World War II, who are going to be activated and create a revolution to bring back the Reich. It's the Fourth Reich. It's just like, how out to lunch did he turn out to be? I mean, that was completely off off the page, while the opposite, which they all bitched and moaned about, was 100% true. The sleeper cells were all communists, and
that's true. Yeah.
You know, it's just interesting how wrong he was. I mean, now I don't blame
he was
him
right
for,
after though. Sorry, you're Mr. Smart Guy from a million years later, of course. But 1948, you know, when you had this big thing, and the average American, by the way, is not this politically minded. And it's not against America, like any person whatsoever, either today or back. Today, people like to pretend like they know what's going on, but no one really knows what is going on. If tomorrow they're like, oh, there's actually Nazis everywhere, you know, there's the mystery of the recent events where people don't know what's coming next. And of course, in hindsight, yeah, that's not what happened at all. But that fear.
No,
is
it's
very...
not. No, Darius. By the time this movie was made, there were plenty of people who were trying to sound the alarm about communist infiltration, and they were being censored. They were being censored by the federal government, not just and the cultural organizations, just like today, just like the last 10 years. Their voices were censored because the USSR was an American ally until they weren't. And everyone who complained about this, and then of course we all see what McCarthyism has become a byword for. But he was right, as clumsy and as oafish as he was in some cases. He was right ultimately that there was a vast network of communist sleeper agents, some of whom were just, you know, innocently along for the ride and not really knowing what they were doing, but most of whom knew exactly what they were doing, and at minimum were useful idiots for the Reds, and that was the problem, not secret Nazis everywhere. So
I know, but I'm not saying it's realistic, but just the idea is extremely interesting, especially in the context. You know, like it's not. It didn't come to be true, but the plausibility of this in 1946, I think, is I don't know. It's strong, even though.
But there's nothing. Here's the thing about the movie. There's nothing in it of the tangible kind of evil, or even sincere ideology, you know, that you might have expected of the professor. What's his name in it? Do you remember?
Well, his name is Franz. The real name, the fake name, I forget. Charles Rankin. Charles Rankin.
Okay, yeah. I think of everyone as Harry Lime these days. Everything of him always is Harry Lime, because this is basically like the proto Harry Lime character.
But this is what I'm talking about. You see, this man, he's presented as this evil. Basically, it's Hitler who got away. He's Satan. Blah blah blah. But in this film, in the context in which he is after the Second World, after the crushing defeat, he is almost like an actual mouse. Like, he's so scared. He's always paranoid. He's not this grand master of evil. He's reduced to this very, very scared man. I think that's very thoughtful and nuanced and intelligent in a depiction of a Nazi, like right after the war, instead of this like,
but
I have secret sex dungeons in my backyard. You know, like that's not what we're having in this movie.
No, I know it wasn't like that, but it was better than that. But he doesn't make a convincing case for Nazism to me. Like, I wasn't convinced. I wasn't ready to order my Nazi uniform from Kanye West after watching this movie, and I felt like I should have been. You got to at least talk me to the ledge a little bit. Like, you got to make a more convincing case, and ultimately there was no case. There was no conviction. All he could end up doing was like showing his Nazi killing a man, which was to, you know, in order to save his own skin. You know, it's not like he tried to turn it into this representation of heartless cruelty, but in fact it was just a spy saving his own skin.
Do you think that's true though? Do you think that's true? Because a killer, vicious dog that's been, you know, tranquilized to the point and like bound up and incapable basically of hurting anybody, you know, may look just like this little pathetic squirming fool, which that's what he is in this film. But the implication is that if he had the power that Edward G. Robinson has, that's where the issue is. Like in this film, there's no attempt to make him look cool or intelligent or actually scheming something. Like, he's got nothing. He's a man who had one connection to his past, and he killed that even. Like, it's a complete escape from his past, you know? Like, not that he changed, but that he wants to blend in. He wants to be absolved of his crimes by obscurity. I don't know. I don't want to keep arguing about it. Like, it's okay, but I love this fucking movie so much, man. It's such a beautiful everything. The sound of the clock tower. I hear that. I'm stealing that. I don't care. I'm stealing that sound. It's such a beautiful layered sound. I don't know.
Another sound thing. No, I like it. Yes. I like the movie a lot. I'm not trying to like, I'm not trying to like counter signal
I know.
your passionate, ardor for the movie. But I do think there's something missing that you begin to see now in this movie that you will increasingly be missing in later movies, with the exception of a few. And that's, I guess, what I'm just trying to like wrap my head around. Like I appreciate. It's a very watchable movie. It's a very it's more consistent than his movies will be for a long time to come. Like the tone, everything about it is consistent. It's like it's very gripping. It's straightforward. I think this could have been an all-time classic film noir type of movie. Not necessarily film noir, but like he could have made an all-time classic film noir, and he didn't for some reason that doesn't make sense. He should have.
Okay, the last
Citizen
part I
Kane is
disagree
almost
with,
there.
But the noir lighting it absolutely is a noir, not in the cheesy like
It is a noir, but it's not. It's somehow not. It could have been better, is all I'm trying to say. But I guess that's a weak argument. But
look, you're right on everything except this one, buddy. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is a masterpiece.
All right, you're saying it's a masterpiece of all time.
Masterpiece of all. I would say I prefer it to the Big Csiky. We'll keep it for later. I love The Stranger.
Oh, don't tell me you. No, I'm not going to accept that. That's going to be dismissed out of court.
Let's talk about.
Okay,
anyways.
But that's an objection. That's object. I'm just. That's dismissed. The jury shall not consider that at all. That's just not even serious. Okay, next movie. What's the next movie?
Well, we're not going. Oh, we were going chronologically by accident. But I you know what? Honestly, I don't want to disrupt this show too much. Let's just whatever. What do you feel right now is the right next movie to talk about? We don't have to go in line necessarily.
Well, the thing is this: he enters this mode here where he does a bunch of bullshit, a lot of false. He by the way, he's always getting projects together that aren't coming together. Like this habit This started with "It's All True." I mean, it started with Heart of Darkness, but that was a more legitimate failure, false start. He gets into this mode which is familiar to people in the podcasting world, where they start things that they do not complete, and they come up with many great dinner, like appetizer ideas that never get to the main course. This doesn't work, that doesn't work, this falls through. A lot of fascinating ideas. He's always coming up with great premises, great ideas. Never, seldom are they coming together. He raises the money for some, and it doesn't come together, and this and that, and this and that. This really starts happening at this point. This becomes a chronic situation, and he makes some movies again. He makes The Lady from Shanghai. I think that's his next movie. That's right. It's one that I enjoyed more when I watched it 15 years ago. Yeah. Than I did rewatching it this time. No, I agree. The Lady from Shanghai, like all his movies, has a few unforgettable moments, and the rest isn't just bad. It's bad in a way that seems like he just doesn't care about what he's doing. He's just somehow, his heart's not in it. Now, what do you think about The Lady from Shanghai?
It's exactly what you just said. I saw it for the first time not that long ago. I think 3 years ago. And to me, it was like, oh, wow, what a great film. But really, I thought about it again, and there's nothing that stands out except that final epic Chinese theater to mirror scene. Like when you think of it as a film and not just a collection of images, it doesn't stand very tall.
It's got one other thing that stands out, which is the scene when they're having the picnic in the Amazon or whatever the fuck it is, and that's an interesting scene, where what's his name from CK in the crutches. So the story here. Now this could have been the one, by the way. Lady from Shanghai is a very clever mystery plot, thriller type of thing that could have been a great film noir. Especially when you consider that it ends in an iconic mirror scene in San Francisco. I think it was San Francisco, right, or something close to San Francisco.
Makes sense, honestly.
It could have been. This could have been the one that this could have been one of an all-time film noir, but it's not, because it's just. First of all, this is where we meet. This is where we meet Orson Welles, the horrible actor that you wonder what the fuck is he even doing. He plays an Irish and narrates as an Irish character, like an Irish boat guy or whoever, who falls in love with falls in love with Rita Hayworth, his
just
actual
like many
wife.
men do. I was drifting
Just like
along
his
the
real
ocean.
life. So Rita Hayworth is this like Rita Hayworth is his real IRL kind of barnstorming relationship in life that didn't work out, and there's so much drama associated with for years. They're already on the outs, I think, in this movie. Well, by the time he films this movie, they're already not feeling it, and you can kind of see that. And he had at least one child, if not more, with her. And anyway, he plays this like, do the voice, fucking Irish, over the top.
It's shit, man. It's like, I was just a lad trying to make an honest living, but the world sucked me, and like it sucks.
It's a fucking like a Pirates of the Caribbean extra. In this movie. And he's narrating the movie, and it's like you can't escape it, and it just destroys the entire any chance there is that this being a good movie is destroyed by this horrible performance. And you just wonder, what was he thinking? Like, why? I just it makes you. I think that's the thing, is it kind of just makes people angry. Like, why squander any opportunity in such a ham-handed manner? So he's recruited.
You'll see the fake poser, by the way, and I'm real. I don't give a shit. I'm stupid, but I'm real. People will pretend like this is a great film just because of the name. People will say, "Oh yes, of course, the great Orson Welles." This is, and you can tell them, you can suss them out right away about this film.
I mean, this is you're always going to find. You're not an example of this, but you will always find with every director. All of those like dubious, bad vibes cinephiles who like their shittiest work and find excuses for it and make excuses for it. It's the megalopolis kind of factor, right? It's like there's always going to. Yeah, well, but there's plenty of people who don't hate that movie.
No, you're right.
There are plenty of people who make excuses for that movie. And there are plenty of people who make excuses for that movie specifically because it is a bad, incoherent mess shit of a movie. And I say that without having seen it, but I don't, I agree. I'll take the 100% consensus on it, huh?
Yeah. I saw it. I agree 100%.
I'll watch it at some point just out of respect. I'll do that. I'll give him that. But I can already tell what it is, and we all could tell what it was from the beginning. There's many movies like this. There's many even books like this where the tendency to glorify the shittier work of someone great to show how special you are and how different you are from the other girls. You get it? Okay.
Coppola says the same. Sorry. Coppola says the exact same thing. By the way, he's like, if people make a film that's different enough, in 40 years, people will see it as a masterpiece. If a director makes something that's not good or bad but just different. There's going to be a legion of people being like, actually, it's a masterpiece. It happens all the time. You see it all the time.
It does, but you don't want idiots to be the ones who call your movie a masterpiece. You want tasteful people to call your movie. You can create you can trick idiots. That's the thing. Orson Welles knew that very well, I'm sure. I mean, you can always find people who fluff up your master disasters. But is that really what you want? Or do you want to actually, and that is what you want if you get bored, which he obviously was when making this movie. And he obviously was with the entire process of filmmaking after his first big triumph. I think the problem is that he exhausted his interest in the movie so early that he never really could get hard. Never really could get hard for filmmaking again. And he ended at this constant, like half chub, condition as a filmmaker.
That's a very good analogy. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Thank you. I was hoping you would say something nice about the analogy. As I was saying it, I'm like, I think this really works as an analogy.
That's a pretty good point.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Which you see especially in films, like, again, we'll get to it later probably, but The Other Side of the Wind is also something like that, where you have ideas and it's like, wouldn't it be cool if I made a movie like The Italians, which I hate The Italians, so I'm going to make a movie inside a movie, shoot the hell out of it, but then also give interviews to Peter Bogdanovich, not really finish it, and then say that it's because of the Shah of Iran and the whole world's against me, but really, as you said, he's just not really fully committed. He's not into it that much.
He was so full of shit. And he just had to, he just got, I think, progressively lazier and less interested in completing tasks, and I think that was the problem. And more addicted to hotels, grand meals, and holding court.
Yeah.
And it goes deeper than all that. It's just that he, all of this because he accomplished more than anyone's accomplished until up to the age of 24, maybe ever. I mean, except for whatever, some king.
I'm 24 right now. TS Scam coming out this year. I'm kidding. Yeah.
It's over for you, man. You hit the wall already. It's done. Where is it? Where is it? Where is the greatest theatrical, radio, and cinema masterpiece of all time? Where is it? Because that's what he made by the age of 24.
Yeah, well, I
he
just
had the
finished
greatest
the cut
theatrical.
out to the sound. Yeah. No, you're right. There's no radio in there. Yeah. Damn.
There's no radio. No, well,
so
you're doing
close.
podcasting, but you've done theater. You've done the best. You've done the most. You've taken the world by storm on the stage, on screen, and in the radio.
Every time I'm asking for a discount, I'm like, please give it to me. Yeah, at the store. I don't know, whatever. This is a garbage.
I mean, listen, if you're not a welcome guest at Leonard Cohen's home whenever you want.
Yeah, that's right.
Really
I was like, please. So long, Marianne. I was starting to sing. Yeah. Damn.
You should take a guitar and sing outside their window like a forlorn lover.
Dude, imagine if it's some Saudi prince, just someone who has no fucking clue who Leonard Cohen is, and you got this goober outside singing the whole day. That would drive you insane. Especially
if it's a Saudi prince, I recommend wearing a Star of David as you sing.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell him about the previous tenant. He's not going to be happy about the property he just bought, I think. But
right.
Anyways,
you can put
whatever.
This
stupid joke.
This guitar kills mullahs or whatever.
But my point being,
okay.
Yeah.
Your point.
Go ahead. I don't really have a point, but the point being that yes, you're right. He's a overachiever very early, and then the rest of his life is sort of just the epilogue that lasted way too long. Not that I wanted him to die or anything, but if he did, he would be remembered as this James Dean, sort of like, oh wow, what a blaze of talent. But then he lived, and what we saw was the very gradual dying of the light.
But that's okay, because that gives us the vindication of his masterwork. And that's the point. That's why I wanted to save it for last. And we're not there yet. But
no, I like The Stranger too. Don't worry. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you think blah blah blah. But my point is that there's moments that we're all gonna like, obviously coming up. Yeah. But the point is that without the inevitable decline that was so garish and such a train wreck, without the specific way that he did it too. I mean, without that epilogue, Citizen Kane is still a great film, and maybe it's even more of a like, wow, what a magical like what Jimi Hendrix. It's like it'll become like the Jimi Hendrix of movies, but
black and white
with his life to match, it further kind of, in a way, it undermines it. In a way, it makes you feel a little bit empty about it, and in another way, it totally vindicates the kind of the quandary of that movie, and the tragedy of that movie. That's what it really does. So I think it's all the more interesting that he lived the way he lived. By the way, I always thought, and I'm sure I'm guessing you feel the same way. I've always loved to see Orson Welles in anything. I don't care how hammed up he's being, like in The Long Hot Summer or whatever. Anytime he's on screen, I'm looking, I'm watching. Yeah. I don't care how much he's bullshitting. I'm there. I'm in. So and that's of course that's a blessing and a curse, because that's what enables you to be so lazy and to just wing it. And he wouldn't learn his lines. He would refuse to learn his lines. He would just show up and like he really like got lazy. But there are exceptions. I mean, now for example, before we skip past it too far, what do you have to say about his performance as Harry Lime in The Third Man?
It's great. Just great. He has a beautiful playfulness that is so cringy and unwatchable in most people. When someone tries to be cute, it never, ever works. But a simple smile, a little nod, being followed around these like weird, grimy, European divided, what's it called? Not cellars, but these corridors, these like underground tunnels and passages. Such a charming performance and really tasteful, as you said, the opposite of what we see later. Just great, yeah. I mean, look, I'm not breaking new ground here. Third Man, except for the soundtrack, is a beautiful film as well.
Oh, it's an amazing film. It's really on point. As I said, the shot where you first see Harry Lime is achieved with perfection. It's an important film to me personally because my very first recorded Filthy Armenian Adventure was in the Vienna Underground, which had a lot of Third Man vibes in many senses of the phrase. So it's especially relevant to me. The darkness of that, the way it captures the darkness of that city is extremely accurate. It's a very dark city, Vienna, very dark. You can really fall into a black tar pit when you go there, so be careful when you go to Vienna.
I know.
You're warned.
You know what happened to me? I went there for 4 days. I got so sick, I puked my guts out for 4 days. It was 4 days.
Everyone has
constant...
a story. Everyone has a story. It's a dark place.
Yeah. I got a €7 a night Airbnb sort of, and the ceiling was so low that the space, there was like a bunk bed. Under the bunk bed was a shower, and on top of the bunk bed I had about like half a foot of space. So I was almost buried alive in that thing while I was puking.
Can't imagine anything I would less rather do than sleep a night in what you just described.
Yeah.
That sounds like
€7
Vienna.
Though.
That sounds like a complete fucking nightmare. Like you can't like no one could have even filmed. Like this is wow. That is, that is truly something. You can see why the ideas that came from there really. But so that's his best post CK acting performance, hands down.
I actually this is you talk about tasteless hipsters, whatever, film guys. That's me. Jane Eyre. I don't know how to pronounce that, but the adaptation.
That's right. Jane Eyre, I think, is right.
1943 with Joan Fontaine. He's fantastic in that as well.
Oh, yes. I haven't seen that. Oh, okay, I haven't seen that.
It's classic, like over theatrical, etc. So you might not like it, but that film is so. It really grips you from the start, and when he comes in, it's a pure pleasure as well. So, yeah.
Well, he was still caring, and that was very early on,
relatively thin as well, which is I hate to see a man get fat. Anyways.
Well, yeah, he really did let himself go, and it became the sad thing about that is that it seemed to be I don't know. I mean, obviously he just loved to eat, which is again the fat thing is prophesied in the original film. Yeah. You're still eating. I'm still hungry. That's not based on Charles Foster Kane, guys. I mean, that's not based on Randolph Hearst. So we'll get to that. But yeah, the eating, he just became this. He became a self-parody on purpose, and that's the sad part. It's not, there's something. There's just, it's like it's that. What is the missing jigsaw puzzle piece that Marion Davies is looking for on that giant floor? It's like, what is it that caused this to happen? So after The Lady from Shanghai, which I'm not going to recount the plot, it's an elaborate kind of twisty-turny plot where he's hired to watch over his wife, but he's being set up by a sinister thing and whatever. Yeah,
and the guy's like, I'm going to kill myself, but you can kill me first. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, but it's just a lot of the goofy stuff, like, oh, you can kill me and I'm going to give you all this money. And he's like, well, I'm an Irishman. I got to have the money. And then he's like, oh, it was all a trap. And then he said, like that classic, when Dead Men Wear Played, it to me is the epitome of the horrible, terrible modern view on noir. The making fun of it, making light of everything, making it sound like it's just some hack garbage. And every stereotype you see in The Lady from Shanghai. So you see a lot of these sort of the worst elements of noir are all crammed into this movie. Mm-hmm. Sorry, but yeah, it's a farce. I mean, it's a farce without the humor. So yeah,
it's just not. It's an amusement park ride. Yes. Like a garish amusement park ride. Yeah.
Literally at the end.
There's no reason it couldn't have been better. There's no reason it couldn't have been. If you took it seriously, it could have been better. A guy hiring him to kill him and all this. There is a sexual component that could have been, but he was maybe so sick of Rita Hayworth at that point that he just didn't care to see it through. You know, a crippled husband hiring a young, hotter guy, virile guy, to cuck him and kill him has the potential. I mean, look at what Hitchcock would have done with that. Hitchcock would have kicked the shit out of that movie. If you give Hitchcock that movie, that script, I mean, you know, he would have obviously done a lot of things to change it around, but Hitchcock could have made an absolute masterpiece out of that movie. And
your audience already hates me, but I don't like Hitchcock at all. We've gone over this. I'm not a Hitchcockian fan. I'm sorry. Look, it's the truth. What, you want me to lie? You want me to say that's true? You want me to say pretend I like the birds? I don't like the birds. I'm sorry. Whatever. Let's move on.
I do want you to lie when you have that. When your take is that bad, please just lie and pretend.
Well, you don't like The Stranger. How do you not like The Stranger, bro? Oh my goodness! I gotta bring.
If you're trying to compare The Stranger to The Birds or to anything by Alfred Hitchcock, you are off your meds.
Absolutely, I don't want to come back.
You are
on my
off
meds.
your SSRIs, sir.
If I need SSRIs, okay, to enjoy The Birds, then I don't want them. You know, I'm swallowing the pills, but actually not really, and I'm spitting them out. And I'm loving The Stranger, 1946. We can move on.
Right,
and let's not. We're not going to take the whole episode.
We're moving
here,
on.
But,
Please.
Yes.
All right, what's next?
The ones you haven't seen, right? So the two Shakespearean adaptations, which
the Shakespeare's I saw. Which one did I see? I saw Chimes at Midnight, but that's
later. Yeah. But I mean Macbeth first, and then Othello.
Macbeth and then Othello. Yeah. Well, tell me what you love about these two movies. I haven't seen them, so we're gonna pass them. But do you quickly want to say anything about them?
Yeah, I think it was pre-show. I told you I really love Macbeth. I read it in high school, like everybody, pretty much. I think, and yeah, it's been my favorite Shakespeare since then. I really love the whole story, the way it's written. I have a copy here. I read it all the time. But the film itself, it's nothing spectacular. It's just a straight up adaptation. Othello, however, he plays a Moor, so blackface fans rejoice. But really, the great part about Othello is the way it's shot. I think it elevates the piece, the theater piece, through cinematic style. What you see in adaptations of plays is usually a dream casting, right? So you're like, oh, you have this play. Who do you like to play that character, that character? Oh, what about Willem Dafoe? That sort of idealistic, like, what if X played Y? Othello never delves into that. It's a fully reinvented play because of the style, of the cinematography, of the quick cuts, of the initial scene, which I mentioned to you as well, like the very somber, almost like was it Dies Irae? That like the three notes of the devil, essentially, like that sort of dark, brooding, but also beautiful adaptation. It's just fantastic. And of course, the play is classic. Iago.
He was very, both on the radio, because he did Shakespeare tons of times on the radio, and of course on the stage. And he was very ruthlessly. He had no qualms about slashing the text to be briefer. To the point, like modern, brief, and he did that with great liberality, and by all accounts, he was pretty good at doing that. Yeah, he was pretty good at making something, so that it could carry across the modern footlights.
Yeah, he made Iago have ED. That's very funny. It's very interesting as a choice here, but yeah. No, I'm telling you, it's a great film, and again, very
I
short.
heard that his Iago is very sexually is like he plays up the homoeroticism between Iago and Othello, which that flies to me. Did you see that?
But that's not what I don't think. Maybe he said that in interviews, but in the film, I know that many adaptations do this. For here, it's more like he's just impotent. It's not really a homosexual attraction. It's more like he wants to have Desdemona, but he can't really because he's not as strong as
that's sort of a cop-out, isn't it? I mean, who's really impotent? Is anyone really impotent? I mean, I don't know that they're so. I think impotence is a cope. I think.
Well, all you have to do is change your lifestyle. Stop living so shit, man, and then it's stop. That's my Doctor DC here.
Yeah, I mean, the impotence is it's like asexuality. It's a rather flimsy alibi. You know what I mean?
But it makes sense temporarily, though. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure
of course. But that's just being depressed. I mean, that's,
Mr. Arkadin, that may be depressed, dude. Anyway, so let's not spend too much time.
Mr. Arkadin is a shit show. Now this is Mr. Arkadin is this movie he makes, which is about a guy, like an internet, like almost like it could be like a James Bond movie. It's this like billionaire who hires someone to investigate his past.
Yeah.
Not because he doesn't know what his past is, but because he wants to know if there's anything that they can get on. Like if there's any, supposedly he wants to know if there's anything that they can use to trace him or something. He's living in a mystery life. He's supposedly done sinister things in the past, and he wants somebody to investigate those things so he can see if there are any kind of loose holes that could lead someone to find him. Isn't that kind of what it is?
No,
like
that's
such.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, you're completely right. It's just this film has so many versions because I think but each one got fucked up in terrible, horrible ways. It's really funny. There's a whole documentary about how the Criterion masterminds, they put everything together. We have this print and that print. Like that just means that there's no film, you know?
Yeah,
if you need nerds
that.
from 2020 to make your film, it's not a real, you know, like it's.
If you have 3 girlfriends, you have no girlfriends.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I will say though, another great performance by Michael Redgrave. I love that man. He looks like, damn, I forget what, you know, Aberama Gold, the guy who plays him. Fuck, I forget his name. The guy who plays in The Dark Knight as well. That guy who's out in Peaky Blinders. Anyways, it's horrible, but that Irish actor looks like Michael Redgrave. Michael Redgrave played, of course, in your favorites, The Lady Vanishes, which is one of the only good Hitchcock films. Anyways, I had to bring this up because he was really great in this film as well.
The lady from Shanghai vanishes.
Yeah.
It's a movie where Orson Welles deliberately wears absurd makeup, and in this absurd over the top eye makeup and thing, he plays this absurd over the top mystery man who engages this absurd over top plot that makes no sense. As the guy that he has hired, the investigator, turns up various characters from Arkadin's past. He has an absurd over-the-top accent. Another accent, Mr. Arkadin. As he turns people up from the past, they end up getting murdered. And so inevitably it's going to come down to him. Meanwhile, he falls in love with the Arkadin's daughter. You know, it could have been interesting, theoretically, if, for example, Arkadin didn't remember his past and was trying to rediscover his past. This is just a complete shit show of a movie that doesn't amount to anything. But there's a couple points to make about it. One is that there is a speech. Again, we're reaching the point where the only moment that matters in any kind of fucking Orson Welles movie is the one speech he gives at some point, which you can tell he you know, where again he's doing the toast at the dinner table from real life, and he does give a speech where he lets us in on one of the obsessions that have dogged him his entire life from the first movie on, and one of the things that he's really tormented by, which is his loneliness and his lack of friends, real friends, and he does this speech for like where he says a man went to a he does a few of these speeches, by the way. And you know, some of them are just sort of like he undercuts with a joke, but this one is like a man went to an island in somewhere or another, in a Japanese island, and he went and he was shown the cemetery there, and all the graves on the cemetery were marked 1936 to 1941, and 1935 to 1937, and all these short. And the man asks the guy, "Well, who are the people that lived here? Why did they all live such short lives?" And he is told that here in this village, the dates on a person's tombstone represent how long he was able to keep a friend. So let us drink to friendship. And so, you know, there's a touching little toast of, you know, a little anecdotal, a little story toast about the difficulty of keeping friends. And I think that was something that came from his real, you know, his heart. I don't know if you saw that in the version you saw.
I've seen all three. I've seen Confidential Reports and all that crap. But yeah, I will say this is so true. tried so hard to present as this artiste, who doesn't really care that friends come and go, such is life, But actually, I think it really hurt him every time someone betrayed him, or whenever he felt like someone betrayed him, whether that's true or not. So definitely, you see that slip through. I think the nose as well is one of those. That's kind of funny because he's such a legend of cinema. He always wore a fake nose to almost as an imperceptible tiny little touch. But here he really hams it up. It's really extreme. It's maximalist. So I don't know. I like some of the elements here. Some of the ideas that are allowed to flourish in this film. Like I like that. At the same time, I'm telling you, this has been put together from a million tiny pieces, right? So of course you'll have a great scene like this. You'll have some cool shots. For example, the one of the endings, I forget which version, but is like the airplane sort of crashes, and they didn't actually film an airplane crashing completely. So they do a bunch of weird trickery. It's almost experimental, and it's edit like these things I love, and honesty I love. But you're right. It's same with Lady with Shanghai from Shanghai. There's a bit of a farcical element that still is seen, and I don't like it. For me, anytime anybody is even slightly insincere, I despise it. In cinema. In real life, we're all stupid. We all make mistakes. But in cinema, you can't allow yourself to fall into the joke fully, because at that point, you're just saying nothing. You're doing nothing. And Arkadin is just empty, man. The character who isn't him, the younger man, I forget what he's called, who the actor is, he has such a dumb expression the whole time that, and I'm sure Orson Welles saw this, like he's not blind, right? And it turns everything into like a cheap sort of, the joke is played on this character, and it's all a big joke, and we're all just joking. There's nothing serious, and it's all sort of like this big meta commentary on nothing, basically. And it rubs me the wrong way, no matter how much you recut it or change it, whatever.
And even worse than everything you're saying now is that it is a vandalism and a perversion of a certain movie that we will discuss later. I'm going to come back from our little break, our coffee break, called Citizen Kane. This is Citizen Kane turned upside down and inside out and into nothing, literally. Mm-hmm. So this is Citizen Kane. It's a movie about trying to put the pieces together to figure out a man who can't be figured out, and in such a manner through such a process. And this is kind of a farce of that very movie. So this is the Black Lodge Citizen Kane.
I wish
utterly,
it was.
And for that it makes it even worse, And even
what
more.
I mean by I wish, not that I like that, but the just to bring up the Black Lodge and like an evil version of Citizen Kane, that's not what. Like I know what you mean, but that's not even, doesn't get close. The imitation is so cheap.
I'm making it sound more interesting than it is. You won't even consider that because the movie's so pathetic that you're not like pondering it seriously. But that's what it is. It's like he's making a joke on it. He's debasing his own masterpiece with this movie. He's making a joke at his own expense. Like
our expense is the viewer's expense, I'd say.
Well, anyone who loves the movie's expense. It's sad and it's shitty. A horrible movie. Don't waste your time.
Listen to this moron here. I just pulled up Letterboxd because I am a Zoomer. I gotta confirm that. So one of the top reviews here, 4.5 stars. Okay. As with so many other Orson Welles projects, I can only dream what his ideal version of this would have been. But even his least favorite iteration, Confidential Report, is still tons of fun, full of great atmosphere and colorful European locations. First of all, it's black and white, moron. Anyways, full of great atmosphere and colorful European locations, and his dynamic and expressive camera work. That boat scene, favorite telltale moment. Anyway, so he just goes on sucking this movie off because again, and then you click, of course, because I'm a stalker, I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo, and this man's top 4 is Raising Arizona, It Felt Like a Kiss, Star Crash, and the whole shooting match. Of course, a Coen Brothers fan would love this like postmodern, not even postmodern, but like post-sincerity joke on everything. Of course.
Yeah, it's just a cautionary tale, guys. If you enter that mode where nothing matters and everything is just pure, like tinsel, cheap Halloween mask rigmarole. There's really nowhere for you to go. I mean, it's a real dead end. It's a real fucking dead end.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to do this. I don't quite know what is going on. It seems our signal is being jammed on account of, according to this alert from the Griffith Observatory, a possible unidentified alien invasion from the south in the form of a huge sonic beam emanating from thousands of Bluetooth speakers. They're being very unclear about this, and apparently they're jamming the local signals to distort whatever the attack is. I don't quite know what to say. Please return next week. We're going to put the rest of the episode behind a paywall, so it's safe from whatever is going on. Don't be alarmed. Everything will be fine. Patreon.com/filthyarmenian for part 2 of the failure of Orson Welles. And so many more episodes, twice as many adventures, regular smoke breaks on topics of the day. Subscribe on your browser, not on the Apple Store app or whatever, because they're adding all kinds of weird fees now. Subscribe on your browser, patreon.com/filthyarmenian, and we'll be back for round 2 next week. Stay safe.